Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into Surah Al-Ahzab, a chapter from the Quran that was revealed during a moment of absolute existential crisis. It's an incredible story of a community pushed right to the edge and the deep social transformation that came out of the fire. Just listen to that quote for a second. It really captures the raw desperation, doesn't it? This is what it felt like to be trapped inside a city under siege, pushed to the absolute limit. In this explainer, we're going to dig into Surah Al-Ahzab to see not just how they survived, but how that very trial forged an entirely new society. So, to really wrap our heads around this chapter, we've got to understand the context, the historical event that frames everything. It's known as the Battle of the Trench, or in Arabic, the Battle of the Clans, Al-Ahzab. Okay, try to picture this. An army of up to 12,000 soldiers marching on your city. For that time and place, this was a force on a scale Arabia had literally never seen before. And they had one goal, to completely wipe you off of the map. That was the grim reality for the small, fledgling community in Medina. And here's the thing, this wasn't just one enemy. It was a massive coalition, a sort of supergroup of enemies, all converging from different directions. You had the Quraysh from Mecca, their old foes, you had exiled Jewish tribes from the north, and then you had these powerful nomadic confederations like the Ghatafan from the east. All of them united for one purpose, to crush this new faith. So, with only 3,000 defenders, they were outnumbered at least 3-1. The odds were just staggering. What do? Well, they came up with something completely new, a brilliant strategy suggested by Salman the Persian. They dug a huge trench across the most vulnerable part of the city. Now, this kind of defensive tactic was totally alien to Arab warfare at the time, and it completely stopped the invading cavalry in its tracks. But the real fight wasn't just about swords and shields at that trench. The month-long siege turned into this intense pressure cooker. It became a profound test of faith that started to reveal the true character of every single person huddled inside the city. And this is where things get really fascinating. You've got the exact same crisis, the same existential threat, but you see two totally different responses. On one side, you have the true believers. For them, seeing this massive army actually made their resolve stronger. But on the other side, you had the hypocrites, people who were Muslim in name only. And for them, the pressure just cracked their facade wide open, revealing all the doubt and fear underneath. And this was a huge problem. It wasn't just that some people were scared. No, they were actively spreading poison, trying to undermine the whole defense from the inside. They were whispering things like this, basically, saying, let's just give up, surrender our leader, and save ourselves. A psychological war was raging right there inside the city walls. But then you have this. Just look at the complete opposite reaction. The true believers, they see this enormous army bearing down on them, and instead of despair, they say, this is it. This is the test we were promised. Their faith didn't just hold steady, it actually grew stronger in the face of what looked like certain doom. All right, so we've got this month-long, terrifying standoff. How does it end? You might expect a massive, bloody battle, right? Well, it was nothing like that. After a month of starvation and fear, the end came almost miraculously. The way the siege fell apart was actually a combination of things. First, just time itself was wearing down the huge coalition army. Then, you have this brilliant move of espionage, where a new Muslim convert actually goes behind enemy lines and cleverly creates mistrust between the allied groups. But the final straw, the real knockout punch, came from nature itself. A freezing, violent windstorm just tore through their camp, ripping up tents, putting out their fires, and completely shattering their morale. By morning, the entire army was gone. So, the storm passes. The enemy is gone. And this is where Surah Al-Ahzab takes a really interesting turn. The focus shifts. It moves from the outside threat to the inside, to the community itself. It was time to rebuild and reform, using the lessons learned from the siege. Okay, so one of the first big things the chapter addresses is the custom of adoption. Now, you have to understand, back then, in pre-Islamic Arabia, an adopted son wasn't just like a son. For all intents and purposes, he was a son. Legally, socially, the whole 9 yards. He had inheritance rights, and the same rules about who you could or couldn't marry applied as if he were a biological son. So, how do you change a tradition that's so deeply rooted in the culture? Well, it took a 1-2 punch. First, you get the legal decree, a direct revelation saying that adopted sons are to be called by their fathers' names, not the adoptive fathers. But a law isn't always enough to change hearts and minds, right? So it was followed by a powerful, real-life example. The prophet himself was commanded to marry the divorced wife of his own formerly adopted son Zayd. This act, as high-profile as it gets, shattered that old taboo for good. The revelations then zoom in on the prophet's own household. And there's a really important reason for this. His family, especially his wives, were in the public eye. They weren't just private citizens. They were meant to be the role models, the standard bearers for the entire community. So what we see here are the building blocks of a new social code and new etiquette. The directives encouraged making the home the primary sphere of activity, moving away from the public displays of finery that were common before. They set clear guidelines for interactions, and for when it was necessary to go out, a new standard of dress was introduced, an outer garment to ensure they be recognized as respectable women and be protected. And when you put it all together, you see the bigger picture. This wasn't just a random list of rules. These were all social tools, designed to forge a new and distinct identity for the Muslim community. The goal was to build a society from the ground up, founded on principles of modesty, dignity, and mutual respect. So what Surah Al-Ahzab really shows us is that these moments of intense pressure, these huge crises, they do more than just test a community. They can fundamentally reshape it, its laws, its values, its very identity. And that leaves us with a pretty compelling question for our own time. What are the great trials we're facing right now, and how are they, at this very moment, forging the societies of tomorrow?